So this is 1 Timothy chapter 6, the scripture for October 1st. Now, in this concluding chapter of Paul's first letter to Timothy, Paul again gives guidance that's shocking to modern thought and is really against our current norms regarding slaves. Now, as we've highlighted before, you can see there's a video from Ephesians 6 I'll put in the description, along with 1 Peter 2 that you'll find below. As we've highlighted before, the slavery that Paul knew was not the same as the slavery that we've seen in America in one way, shape, or form in the past 400 years, known as chattel slavery, where people are treated as animals based on the color of their skin. No, the slavery Paul knew was much more like indentured servitude, where people would sell their labor and indenture themselves for a set period of time, where they weren't looked at per se as second-class citizens, but as people who were permanently employed over the course of several years. Again, it may still feel offensive to modern ears. However, it's important that we look at the context in which this was written. In any case, the guidance that Paul gives here seems much more in line with cultural expectations than the guidance he gives elsewhere about slaves and masters. Perhaps, as 1 Timothy is a letter that offers directions for church governance, Paul's focus was less on equity between masters and slaves and less on justice for individuals, and more on how is it that the church is kept healthy. And one way the church is kept healthy is by not having slave uprisings. And this again may be frustrating for us as people who for whom slavery is offensive and maybe a little shocking. In that time frame, that was something that I think may have still been problematic, but was more appropriate in Paul's context. One of the most frustrating types of people, I think, for me to discuss issues with, moving to the next part of the chapter, is the person who, when they face disagreement, begins to insult me, attacking not my argument or my position, but my person and my character. Now, this is not what Paul's doing here. He's not telling Timothy, hey, this is how you should argue with someone. You should tell them that they're, conceited and an instrument of Satan, right? No, he's helping Timothy establish boundaries. There are going to be people who, no matter how long you walk with them, no matter how persuasive or thoughtful or winsome your arguments are, they're going to refuse to see the clear light of Scripture. They're going to refuse to see the clear light of reality. That's just the way some people are. And that's the way I think we all are. We all have certain blind spots where we're going to refuse to see clarity in certain ways. Now, you don't need to give such people time and energy that's better spent elsewhere. Paul isn't commanding Timothy to reveal these people as bringers of envy or dissension or anything else. Rather, this is an internal conversation, training Timothy to be the best church leader possible. And part of being the best church leader possible is being selective with how your time is invested. Now, part of this training also involves spending your energy in the right places. And another part involves valuing things, people, and opportunities appropriately. Money has value, as Paul says, but not a value that surpasses all other things. Instead, service to God, that great opportunity by which we grow in faith, that's a treasure that's worth pursuing. Not only does God alone give life to all creation, but God's the ultimate sovereign over the earth. So when we value something else more than God or service to God, what we're actually doing is we're challenging the king. If we value money more than we value service to God, we're challenging the king, right? If we value how we set up our home more than how we serve God, we're challenging the king. We can play this game with a lot of different things. If we value figuring out what school our kids are going to and making sure they get into a great school more than we value their spiritual upbringing, we're rebelling against the king. That's not a good plan, friends. Instead, we need to leverage everything else of value we possess towards serving this mighty king who's been so gracious and loving toward us. Through doing this, whatever riches we actually have are going to take on their true value because they'll be aimed in the right direction, able to make an impact and a difference in the world. Now I wonder, what boundaries do you struggle to enforce? That's all for 1 Timothy chapter 6. Tomorrow, the 2nd of October, we'll be looking at 2 Timothy chapter 1. May God bless you in your reading of Scripture.